What is going on, ladies and gentlemen? This is the Fourth and Fantasy Podcast, episode 15 coming at you. My name's Meek. I got my co-host across the table, Wu.
How we doing?
Wu, today, 61 degrees, sun is out.
I mean, it's the best time of the year.
We're coming through the clouds,
I'm on record saying this. It's the best time of the year. Spring's here. Such a relaxing weekend watching the Masters.
Yes.
A tradition
Shout out Rory.
like any other. Shout out Rory. That was some nuts right there. But yeah, sun's out, man. Oh, man.
Love it. And listen, with the springtime coming around, it just also gets me hyped for draft season, man. Draft season coming a week away, right? So can't wait to give that to you. The week of the draft, we're gonna give you a draft impressions video. But this week we're gonna give you just some Dynasty 101 tips. Like
everybody needs them.
Even if you're a seasoned veteran, or if you're someone who's starting out Dynasty, this is your first year. We're gonna give you some tips. Pick and choose which ones you want to use. You know what I mean? And but they're overall pretty helpful. Again, just at the top of the show, we've hit 920 plus plays across Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube. That's all thanks to the folks at home, you listening, you watching. We appreciate you. Make sure you're following us on Twitter at Fourth and Fantasy Pod, Instagram and TikTok at Fourth and Fantasy, YouTube Fourth and Fantasy. Make sure you give us a like and follow on all of our socials and leave a comment because you may see yourself on the show. One thing I do want to point out, like I said last week, we're working with a fantasy football company that goes by the name of Fantasy Trading Room. We put out a video last week and actually this week. This week's episode was called Dynasty Cornerstones. So make sure you give in that a listen. I think it's actually doing pretty well. We were just talking about that, before the show. It's got like 1.8K views.
Yeah, we're off to a solid start.
Yeah, we're off to a solid start. So you're going to see more content from us. If if you're someone who is migrated over from Fantasy Trading Room, welcome.
How we doing?
Nice to see you. But quick question of the day, Wu, before we get into our NFL news and our Dynasty tips. I call this one Busted. Who is one player that could be a potential bust in 2025 compared to where they finished in 2024? I'll go first.
Go for it.
First one I'm going to give you is Mr. James Conner, running back of the Buffalo Bills. Listen, James Conner had a fun. Not James Conner. James Cook.
There it is.
Sorry, I meant to say James Cook.
We're warming up here.
That's all right. James Cook gave you a phenomenal season last year. I believe he was the running back. I'm trying to get that for you. Running back 8, right? But that was running back 8 off the back of 16 touchdowns. He is in Buffalo, and it is a prolific offense, but, we've talked about this before that, touchdowns are not a sticky stat. A lot of players actually regress from where they previously were, and I can see James Cook, going back from 16, even if he drops off to about, 10 or so, that hurts him fantasy-wise. And I think a lot of his fantasy points came from touchdowns. I don't have the math in front of me, but 16 times 6 is about 92,
something like that.
96
I'm
something.
done with school.
Yeah, so that's a lot of points. Out of his 266 points that he had, and so that's someone who may bust for you. Come next season.
Yeah, but he was barely 1,000-yard rusher, so that big touchdowns number is kind of scary, and he's not. There isn't a huge amount of receiving work, so. The touchdowns, they're probably going to come down, and with that, so will his fantasy finish.
Absolutely. Who do you have, Wu, for a busted candidate?
I also have another running back. It's sad to say because I really like this guy, but I'm going to go David Montgomery from the Lions.
Yeah.
He's 27 years old.
You must have read my notes.
Well, I was just going to say, this is gonna tie into what we talk about later on the show, but he's coming off an RB18 year. We've seen the 1-2 punch with him and Gibbs, and it's so prolific and, just really fun to watch. Sonic and what's the other guy?
Knuckles.
Sonic and Knuckles. Yeah, I mean, it's a great combo, but, we just saw when, Montgomery misses time late in the year and Detroit kind of gives the keys to Gibbs and he just rips.
Oh, my God, yeah.
I think, I didn't think there was ever really too much of a question whether or not Gibbs could, do it by himself, but I think now that the answer is solidified that he can absolutely do it by himself.
Right.
And Montgomery's coming up in age. He's coming off of 12 touchdowns, which is nowhere near the 18 touchdowns that Cook had, but it's still a pretty big number for someone that only had an RB18 finish.
And I want to say, if you look at his fantasy, like total fantasy points compared to his touchdowns, it's that scale is probably worse than what Cook has because,
Yeah.
you know, you never saw David Montgomery like running down the sideline, breaking off big runs. It was always, you know, Gibbs was in between the 20s, ripping off runs, and then once they got into the red zone, it was, you know, you can count David Montgomery for a touchdown every single week.
Exactly, and Ben Johnson leaves. I still fully anticipate, you know, Dan Campbell being incredibly aggressive and wanting to pound the rock, but I'm just nervous that it's gonna slowly become more and more Gibbs and David Montgomery's left in the dust.
Right. So NFL news and things, just threw you know, a bunch of things in here. Listen, it's the off season, you know, so there were a couple of news pieces that I just put in, and then a bunch of pre-draft visits and wanted to get your takes on those. But a quick couple of news pieces that I had. Panthers Bryce Young says he's ready to grow and build in year 3. I know we talked about Bryce Young last year, or I'm sorry, at the beginning of this podcast of someone you want to buy. And, you know, I think reading that article from Kevin Pitara, it was very encouraging to hear, you know, Bryce Young, because, you know, we talked about last year during the year, Bryce Young being very, like, he almost lost his swagger, like his confidence. And, you know, he had to sit behind Andy Dalton for a couple of years. And then when finally his number was called again, like, he just exuberated confidence and it showed on the football field. And if he's continuing that, you know, confidence going into year 3, I'm in on Bryce Young.
It's crazy how mental all sports can be. And if you don't have the mental piece down, I don't care how talented you are, it's never going to translate. And we saw that with him, like you said, just absolutely no confidence out there. And it was tough to have any confidence playing on that roster. So obviously, you know, he sits behind Dalton and he comes back and he looked like he had that swag back. So I think you're a little bit higher on him than I am, but I'm still happy. I'm still excited to see what he's got for next year. Just get this man a receiver, please.
Yep. Speaking of no confidence, Browns QB Deshaun Watson, quote, "Everyone is doubting me, but I'll come back way better than before."
Can we stop?
I don't know. Do we think it's over for Deshaun Watson?
Yeah, it's absolutely over, and it is in sports history the worst contract of all time. Debate a wall. Come at me. I'm dying on this hill.
No, it's the worst. You put everything guaranteed into your quarterback, and you know it was injury after injury, and even when he was healthy, he just never looked good.
Yeah.
Like he was like, you want to talk about mental? Like he was shot after that whole scandal with the massage therapist and everything.
Yeah. He had a chance week 1 against Dallas. It was the Fox game of the week. Everybody's watching, all eyes on him. And God, that offense looked awful. Yeah, I think they could have rolled one of us out there and we would have been comparable. So yeah, I'm out. Yeah, I'm out. It's over.
I think it's over. And last piece of news before we get into some pre-draft visits, Dak Prescott's hamstring is improving.
Better.
Said at a charity event that, quote, "If I had to play a game today, I definitely could do that." And I'm really hoping, as you know, someone who invested in Dak Prescott in Dynasty, in one of my Dynasty leagues, I'm hoping he comes back 100% and can provide for CeeDee Lamb, because
need that.
I need it big time. But you know, do you see Dak coming back to form next year, or do you think this is the start of the decline for him?
I really hope it's not. But you know, what was it, like 2 years ago when he was, you know, going off with CeeDee Lamb? I would love to see that back. You know, as he's getting older, coming back from these injuries is just going to be harder and harder, no matter how much work he's putting in, because I know he is, and he's really
31.
He's doing everything he can to get back. But when you get older, your body doesn't cooperate as well. So I'm hoping if there is going to be any slow play, it's at the beginning of the year, and he kind of warms up as we go.
I feel for someone like Dak. Like, he's a good dude. You always like to, you know, he always gives out good pressers and things like that, but he's just gone through like crazy injuries. I like crazy stuff too. Like
Cowboys are cursed.
The whole like snapping of his ankle, and you know, now he has like this injury with the hamstring. It was like his hamstring was like tearing off of his bone. Yeah. Like you just pray that the guy actually gets a decent season. But this is the exciting stuff I wanted to get into. So a couple of pre-draft visits. First one was from Jordan Schultz. Got this one. Tedroa McMillan has visited with the Cowboys, Chargers, Patriots, Browns, Seahawks, Panthers, and Saints. And one executive from a 2024 playoff team said, quote, "He's got a true star-level tools and elite production. Our entire building loves him. There's no way he makes it to us." I'm just going to say right now, that is 100% the Chargers who said that, because you look at the list of people, none of those teams are playoff teams except for the Chargers.
Yeah.
So they just outed themselves.
Okay.
But no, I'm high on Tedroa and McMillan. even though, in our last rookie mock draft, I was on the board saying that Travis Hunter is my wide receiver 1. McMillan's no slouch though, you know what I mean? And honestly, all of these teams that I'm seeing, the Cowboys as a number 2 with CeeDee Lamb, the Chargers as a potential 1 or 1B to Ladd, the Patriots being a true dominator, Browns maybe not so much, but then and the Seahawks, but Panthers and Saints, those are all great landing spots.
I was just checking my phone because I swear I saw a notification earlier, and I can't find it, of course, but I saw something that there's scouts that are not sold on a lot of these receivers in the first round, McMillan being one of them, and I don't get it. They're worried about his speed and his overall build as a receiver, but I don't know.
Here's the thing, though,
I think
right?
he should be top 12 regardless.
So obviously we all know that this is a down wide receiver class, and I was hearing this on a previous podcast, but if you really think about it, the reason why it's down is because if you take Travis Hunter out of the equation, it's McMillan, it's Burden, and maybe Ibuka, and then after that it's kind of falls off. But now, if you throw Travis Hunter in, and if we all knew that he was going to be the wide receiver full time for any team, and you're saying McMillan's the second wide receiver in this draft class, and then you throw in Burden and Ibuka,
I'm not mad at that.
And then you have some some late round flyers on some guys, it then shapes up to be a pretty decent draft class. So I guess it starts at the top, potentially with, what happens with Hunter. We could be after draft night, saying listen, this wide receiver class is legit, and the NFL invested in them.
Listen, there's a reason why these NFL scouts get paid to do what they do,
yes.
and we're sitting here. So I will come out and say that, obviously. But every single year, whether it's the NFL draft, the NBA draft, whatever draft is coming up, the talk about the prospects has been going on so long that people are just finding reasons to not like players, and I think we're in that time right now, and it's so annoying. It's these guys are talented. You're just trying to find a new story, and that's where I think we're at right now.
I agree with you. A couple more. Cam Scatterbo visited with the Arizona Cardinals, Cleveland Browns, New York Giants. Browns one sounds interesting. The Browns still haven't. I think Jerome Ford is their RB1 right now. So
is Chubb even on the team? He's still a free agent.
No, he's a free agent.
Yeah,
he's still free agent.
Let him retire, Brown.
Dobbins is, so Cleveland is a sneaky spot where they might take one of these big 5 running backs or someone like Scatterbo. Kyle Williams, wide receiver from Washington State, has been getting a lot of buzz, and I wanted to put him in here. He had a visit with the Chicago Bears, the 49ers, and the Seahawks, but Kyle Williams, who I know we haven't talked about him on the show, but I just wanted to give a quick little profile on him. 5'11", 190 pounds, senior, played at Washington State, so he was there the previous year with Ward. You know what I mean? I don't think he went to the combine, but at his pro day ran a 4.4 40. So he is a burner.
Okay.
And he might be one of those late round, third round flyers you want to take in your rookie draft, or even spend some fab. He might even go undrafted. But I would pay attention to where Kyle Williams goes, because he could be a potential prospect for you to take.
I like that.
And then the last couple ones,
our guy,
I got to shout him out every time. Matthew Golden is visited the Lions. And then Shedeur visited with the Raiders. And I wanted to put this one in here because I'm calling smokescreen all day on this one. I think LA is out on quarterback. I think they're just doing it to, appease everyone after them to think
Brady's telling them to do it.
I could see it. You know what I mean? Just a little gamesmanship to say we might take him.
Yeah.
But they're not. I don't think they are at all. I think they're going to take I think they're going to take Genty at 6, or they go McMillan, because there's no way you get someone like Shedeur and then you extend Geno Smith 2 years, because we talked about that last episode.
That's true. Yeah.
So I'm calling smokescreen on this one all day.
Is it bad? I'm still convinced that Shedeur is going to go even before the Raiders pick.
Yeah, I'm not sold. I think he's going to fall.
So I have another notification I saw earlier, and it's saying that there aren't many coaches or scouts that believe Shedeur Sanders is a first-round talent, from Albert Breer. Listen, I get it's not the greatest quarterback class, but at the end of the day, these football teams have to run with a quarterback.
Yeah.
Cleveland is a team who you're going to throw Deshaun Watson out there after what he did last year. Those first few, I don't even care that he was hurt all year. Though? I don't think so, but he's hurt. He's hurt all season. That's fine, but he played 3-4 games, and the offense looked awful. There's no way you're confident. I know you're tied to the money and you invested in this guy, but it was a brutal mistake. And
yeah.
you have to rip the Band-Aid off and start to move forward. So I can't see like a Cleveland, that is so desperate for a quarterback. Sure, it's not the greatest class, but God, you need to fill the position.
Yeah, there it is, depth chart. No, they don't even have it up. So I have no idea. I thought they got somebody in free agency. I want to say they re-signed Joe Flacco, to be honest with you, but I don't know if they're trotting out Joe Flacco as their
but then again, exactly, like, the dream run with Flacco a couple years ago was awesome. That was also 2 years ago. He's 45.
Yep.
So
yeah, no. So they did re-sign Flacco 3 days ago to a 1 year, $4 million contract. But it was Pickett. They traded for Pickett, and they were talking about Pickett is like we're bringing him in to actually be the guy.
My point still stands. I don't know.
Yeah. So the depth chart is Watson, Flacco, and Pickett right now. So
it's a sick QB room.
It might be. Yeah.
Listen, I'd rather take the chance on Shador than any of those guys.
Yeah.
There's no ceiling with those guys.
No, hey, Super Bowl champion Kenny Pickett. All right, let's get into the main part. So again, ladies and gentlemen, episode 15 today, we are giving you Dynasty 101 tips. So again, these are tips for if you are a seasoned veteran in Dynasty, if you're just starting out. These are just a couple of tips that we're going to give you to give you the edge on some of your league mates, and not all of these may apply to you. All of them might apply to you, but pick and choose which ones to kind of follow through. So Wu and I have about 10 tips for you. I'm gonna highlight each one, give you a couple of tidbits. We might go into a further discussion on each of these tips, but I'm excited. Well, this
is a good episode.
When I was doing this, making this doc, I was like, these are tips that like I myself need to remind myself.
I was just gonna say I gotta listen to my own advice,
right? And this is like something I'm gonna go back to and just check and make sure that I'm kind of like following these key points.
Yeah, you gotta keep yourself honest.
Absolutely. So tip number one at the top is, I call this one being able to self-scout. You have to be able to look at your team and see, what am I good at? What am I bad at? What do I need to improve at? So we talk about analyzing your team and identifying your strengths and weaknesses. And one tool that I love to use, and I don't know if anyone has heard of this. If this is the first time you're hearing it, you're welcome. But it's Keep Trade Cut, and the cool thing about Keep Trade Cut is a website that you can actually put in, we use sleeper leagues. I believe they use other leagues, but you can actually take the code of your sleeper league, put it into this website, and it will give you every single team, and it will rank out what ranking they are 1 through 12 for team overall, quarterback, running back, wide receiver, tight end, and picks. So I if you have not used Keep Trade Cut, please use it, because it's a great tool. So I just threw this one in here. I'm looking at Keep Trade Cut, Wu. Jerry Jones' biggest hater, sitting at 11 in
picks.
No, and overall.
Wow.
Yeah, 11 overall.
Listen,
ninth in QB.
Sleep. I dare everybody to sleep. I dare everybody.
7 in wide receivers, 8 in tight ends, 12 in picks.
Keep Trade Cut. You might have just lost a user. That's crazy disrespect. Yep. All I'll say is the apology needs to be as loud as disrespect. See you in January.
I love it. So that's tip number one. Tip number two, this one's a long one, but this one is very, very helpful. I call this one call your shot. If you have a conviction on a player, you need to go for it. If you don't call your shot now, you're like, oh, this person is going to blow up, and you don't take your shot on them, and they do, what you're gonna have to pay for that, that player is going to be exponentially higher if you didn't just call your shot earlier. So I just gave a couple examples in 2024. So if you called your shot on someone like Bucky Irving, JSN, Trey McBride, Puka, or Brian Thomas Jr., you're loving life right now.
Yeah, you could be hanging a banner. You
know what I mean? These are young players. Some of them were highlighted on our Cornerstone episode. But if you didn't call your shot on them early, now, can you imagine what you have to pay for Brian Thomas Jr. right now, or Trey McBride? Especially Trey McBride signing that extension.
Yeah.
So you want to get it. You want to get to them early, and this is the advice that I'm going to. We're going to break it down by position, each position, and how do we predict a breakout in a player. So we're going to start with running backs. Running backs who hit around RB24 considered a breakout. I believe in half point scoring, I think when I was looking up this article, was about 11.5 points per game. So if you have a player that's scoring 11 and a half points per game, that's considered a breakout. 41% of running backs break out in their rookie year. That's why you see Bucky Irving in last year's, and 72% break out in their second year for running backs. So those are good to know. So it always it's good to bet on rookie running backs, right? Especially and the breakout candidates. I actually have two rookie running backs to talk about. But also sometimes you want to take a bet on a player who goes into year 2. But for 2 breakout candidates that I have for people, first one obviously is Ashton Genty. We've been talking about him the entire time. He's a freak of nature. And also the added benefit of him breaking out and being that true breakout is, he's going to have that first round draft capital, which is huge for any running back. You want to bet on running backs that have first round draft capital, and he's probably going to be the first running back off the board. The second one that I have for you is an interesting one, is Travion Henderson. Yeah. There's been a lot of buzz recently of Travion Henderson becoming a first round draft pick, sneaking into the first round. A lot of people love his skill set, a la Jahmyr Gibbs.
So versatile.
It's so versatile. He's fast. He's quick. Had a true breakout his freshman year at Ohio State. And so you take all of those pieces into consideration on top of if he gets a first round draft capital, you might be wanting to, slide him up your board in rookie drafts in order to, get that true breakout running back.
Yeah. And we talk about the first year running backs, but the sophomore year, not even just running backs, but across all positions is huge. Like HN, his rookie year was RB24. Last year he puts up RB5.
Yeah.
So that's a nail
That's a
on
great
the head
example.
right
I forgot to even put him in.
So you always need to be paying attention. Obviously, especially with running backs, the younger they are, you want to target them their rookie years. But a lot of these positions, that second year breakout the number's massive. Yeah,
and we'll talk about like the later year running backs because I have another tip for you in that. But wide receivers, the next one. So same theme. Wide receivers who hit around wide receiver 24 season are also considered a breakout. 40% of wide receivers their breakouts happen between ages 22 and 23, and 67% of wide receiver breakouts happen in the first 2 years. But the most important thing you need to realize with wide receivers is that if they do not break out by year 3, they'll never break out. They're done, and you want them off your roster. First one person that kind of comes to my head in that aspect is Quentin Johnston. Has yet to break out in 2 years, so this is like his last chance, and if he doesn't break out for you now, get out while you can.
Huge.
Hey, listen, I'm pulling for the man, but it's looking bleak, especially.
Who was the receiver picked after him?
That's Jordan Addison. I hate it, but whatever. So some breakout candidates that I have for you. Sticking with the trend of rookie, Tech McMillan. A lot of stats say that 50% of wide receiver breakouts are in year 1, and 63% of wide receiver breakouts are day 1 rookie receivers. So obviously, we talked about McMillan being a day 1 pick. He's probably going to be a day 1 pick. We talked about how they're trying to poke holes in his game and things like that. He's going to be a day 1 pick, which is going to be great for his, draft capital going forward. So he's someone who you want to look at to potentially break out. Second person that we have is Marvin Harrison Jr., right? We all sat here and was like, this is, he's going to have an amazing season. And, we all say, quote unquote, he flopped, but it was just an average.
For where he was drafted, he did.
For where he's drafted.
But I think that was highly inflated to begin with.
Yes. And the things I put here that you want to take into consideration is that Arizona has a run-heavy offense. Like throughout that year, they ran on the back of James Conner. Can't do it forever because I think James Conner's like 28, 29 years old.
Yep.
And there's not a lot of competition other than Trey McBride. So, and I think, let me see if I can find it. But a lot of his here they are. So when you go deeper into the metrics for Marvin Harrison Jr., he was actually, not that bad. So he had a 0.63 weighted opportunity rating, which is a combination of your target share and air yard share. And that ranks wide receiver 9 amongst all rookies since 2023 or 2013. I'm sorry. So that's like, he's ahead of players like Mike Evans, Brian Thomas Jr. and Jamar Chase. So deeper in the metrics, he's done really well. And I think, given that year of a true NFL offseason as a pro, you could see a breakout happen in year 2 with Marvin Harrison Jr.
Yeah, I'm going to add a third name to that list because I'm standing on business with Rome Odunze.
Yes.
I'm so in.
I love that.
I'm on record with how in I am on Chicago, but he falls into this category of, he's a day 1 receiver. He was the 9th pick last year. And he's going into year 2, which is a huge year for wide receivers at that age. They bring in Ben Johnson, and I'm still in on Caleb Williams, so I'm going to add him to that list as well. But when we talk about like year 2 breakouts, a lot of names that come to mind for me are like A.J. Brown, Deebo Samuel. There's another big one that I was looking at before the show that's escaping my mind right now, but there's a proven track record for these numbers. Like these things happen.
Yeah. And just to go back to, Rome Odunze, like you were talking about, he was the wide receiver 49 last year, but he had 101 targets. Like I'm looking at other people like around him, like he was ahead of someone like Ray McLeod, who only had 87 targets. DeAndre Hopkins was ahead of him, and he only had 80 targets. So like he's getting the targets.
Yep.
He just has to turn them into opportunities, and who knows, next year might be the opportunity for him.
It will be.
2 more positions, tight ends. Really quick, tight end breakouts are when they hit tight end 12 season. 68% of tight ends break out between ages 23 and 25. That's a little bit later than your running backs and wide receivers. So you need to be a little bit more patient on your tight ends. And even superstar tight ends, break out at age 25. I have just a quick list of people: George Kittle, Travis Kelce, and Zach Ertz.
It's a pretty good list.
You know what I mean? So like, even if you drafted, like, I know I don't have him as a breakout candidate, but Kyle Pitts, he's the dude is, I just looked, he's only 24.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like he still hasn't hit that 25 season. So they're still like, the door's cracked open for Kyle
new
Pitts.
QB, who knows?
And then last little piece of info on tight end: 61% of tight ends break out in years 2 or their year 2 or year 3 season. So my candidate for you I have is Dalton Kincaid. He is 23 years old. And then he, this past year was, showing promise compared to his rookie year. Obviously his rookie year was a flop. We were all expecting him to do really well, but it takes a little bit of time. But last year, set career highs in target share, 20.2%, and in air yards, 18.9%. So, if they keep building that, connection between Kincaid and Josh Allen, you might see a breakout for Dalton Kincaid.
Yeah, I love the Kincaid pick. We've been waiting so desperately for this guy to have a monster year, and he's a part of an offense that needs help with pass catching. So if there's ever an opportunity for him for it to happen, I think this year is going to be a great spot for him. The other thing I'll say about tight ends is the last 2 years we've had rookie tight ends be the number 1 overall finish.
And it's fantasy. It's so against the norm though. Like
it is.
Because the information I was pulling from, it's like, you expect them between ages like 23 and 25, and like these guys are youngins coming in and just setting the world on fire.
So this is not me saying I'm guaranteeing a rookie to be the number 1 overall tight end in fantasy, but just keep it in the back of your mind. If one kind of falls to you, you're in a spot where you think it's good value, take the shot, because the last couple of years that's what's happened.
Absolutely. And so, again, this is still tip 2, but rounding it out, we're just talking about quarterbacks. Quarterbacks break out with 16 points per game or in a quarterback 12 season. And most breakouts happen between ages 22 and 23, 41% of the time. And 71% of the time, QB breakouts happen on or before a QB's year 5 season. And 55% are within the first year of a breakout. So my candidates that I have for you are Caleb Williams. We've talked about him before. They invested in the offensive line heavily, center, both the guards, and there's a new head coach with Ben Johnson, and they have the 10th pick. Like there's so many positives going in Caleb Williams' favor that he's the most obvious breakout that I could see.
For sure.
Second one I have for you is an interesting one, is Drake May.
Makes me so nervous.
It's potentially there. Like he averaged 13.2 fantasy points last year. He had some great in the metric stats. He was QB 11 in completion percentage over expectation, QB 17 in success rate, and then he was QB 6 in rush yards per game too. So that's another piece of May's game that could help him break out.
Yeah, the rushing upside was actually pretty huge last year. I don't remember seeing him do that at UNC, so that was new for me. But yeah, the Caleb Williams is obviously the top pick for quarterback breakouts. But Drake May, as an avid Patriots hater, like
you can't say yes on that.
No, I'm going to he like genuinely makes me nervous that he's actually going to be like that good of a quarterback in the NFL.
Yep. So those are some potential breakouts. So if you want to be early on some of those guys, you might want to go trade for them right now.
Definitely before the draft.
Definitely before the draft. Tip number 3 that I have coming your way, keep trade channels open. Listen, we all know trades are hard. Sometimes it feels impossible to even get a trade going.
You get the guy who doesn't respond.
Yep. You get the guy who doesn't respond, the guy who wants more, yada, yada, yada. But don't get discouraged with a potential, partner or with a rejection. Listen, rejections are going to happen just like in life. I feel like I'm giving life advice on top of this.
Ryan Russillo style.
But, as long as you have a constant line of communication, trades are never done. I can think about times where, I thought a trade was dead and gone. Like the person hadn't responded. And the next thing you know, like the next day, like I get an offer in my inbox and I'm like, oh my God, like he was actually, thinking it over. Cause I think a lot of us as Dynasty players, like we send out trade offers and you might look, cause that's, on Sleeper, you see that, you can see when someone saw it and you're like, all right, they're just never going to look at it again. Yeah. But sometimes it's like, they're really pondering, you know what I mean? That trade. So, don't get discouraged, keep that trade channel open.
Yeah. You need to be trading all the time in Dynasty to be able to keep up with the rest of the pack, especially if you're not one of those front-running teams and you're kind of fighting for playoff spots or, trying to work into the playoffs. But, yeah, always got to be talking to people, even if it's just a quick conversation, just seeing what their thoughts are on the player that you want. Because then off the bat, you might know that, there's no point in me continuing this conversation because there's no way they're trading them. So I definitely do that sometimes, kind of float out who I'm looking for and if there's even a possibility. And then if there is, obviously, I'll continue the conversation. But, you always got to send out deals, be talking to everybody at all times, have a feel of what you're looking for. And, maybe there's deals in the past that kind of set the market so you can kind of work off of that. But, it kind of depends on your league.
I think sometimes, too, it's like, with the way that I do trades, it's never like, let me just jam this trade like at you. It's like, I open it up like, hey, like looking at so-and-so, like what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah.
Just before you even put like actual trades into, your league mates inbox, like just text with them, what I mean? To just see where their head's at, what they're looking at, and things like that. So I think that's an important one. Tip number 4, keep tabs on future rookie classes. You don't need to know their stats category by category like we give you here on the show. Obviously when the time comes, it's important to have that, but you don't need to know stat for stat on the players. You need to know the names though.
Yes.
Have an idea what the class looks like. Is it a deep rookie class? Is it a shallow wide receiver class? Is there this, is it a top heavy running back class? Like you need to know the names of these college prospects. And if you have the time, watch some college football. College football is actually fun.
It is.
So I would, just keep that in the back of your mind. One thing that I do, Woo, and I don't know if I've told you this, but I actually have a note stock on my phone where each year, like I'll set up just each positional, like the names just to keep an eye on, like who are the tops of those positions. And then at least I have them in my head, like, okay, I know this player played for Alabama, and just kind of keep my tabs on it as I, go through the college football season.
Yeah, this is one that I've definitely been doing more within the last year or two. Especially with a trade that I just made that we talked about on the show when I sent away Josh Allen. I got a first round pick in return, but I know that my team is weak at quarterback, and I got that solid quarterback class coming up, and I'm anticipating the pick to be kind of early in the first round. So that was something I was keeping in mind during that trade, which is helpful.
Absolutely. And the last part I didn't say is make the appropriate trades early in the season. So, Woo is already planning ahead for 2026, with that trade. So once you kind of get an idea of the players and you want to target, then you make the necessary trades. Yeah,
now is like a really good time for that. Like pre-draft when everybody's thinking about this year, you can kind of sneak in and start to plan for the future.
Exactly. And so this tip number 4 that we just talked about and tip number 5 kind of go almost like hand in hand. So tip number 5, I have this titled as figure out early if you are a contender or a pretender. So it's somewhat related to the rookie class tip, knowing and scouting ahead, but you want to be able to self scout and see if you're a piece away or you're 2 pieces away for, contending for a championship. And then if you're not, don't be afraid to just sell it all. You know what I mean? Sell what you can. Obviously, keep your foundational pieces, but sell off and try to get your draft capital when you can, because you don't want to get stuck in the middle, of like team 5 through 7.
Yeah.
And you're taking rookie picks 5 through 7. You'd rather just, if you're a contender, you go for that championship and you do whatever you can to do it. But if you're someone, it's like, all right, I'm not even going to be sniffing it close, sell it all, because you might as well try to go for a top 3 pick or get multiple top 3 picks so that you can build for the future.
Yeah, you need to be really honest with yourself when it comes to this point in the year when the trade deadline's coming around.
Yes.
If you're in a situation where you're a game or 2 out of the playoffs, sure, you want to keep contending, I'm all for that. If by some miracle that's how you make the playoffs, that's when like, okay, like maybe I gotta sell some pieces off and start working for next year, because this year just isn't I don't have a chance this year unless some miracle happens.
Right.
So you really need to be honest with yourself when it comes to if you are in a contender position. Don't be afraid to go all in. I did it. Yeah, it stung. I lost, but I'm happy that I did it, because I never would have known if I didn't do it.
Absolutely. And prime example for me for this tip, I want to say it was right before the trade deadline. And I was sitting like in the middle, and I was like, dude, I can't sit in the middle. I either have to go for this or not. And so I decided to sell. And the reason why I'm telling the story is that it's not always pretty when you try to do it. So like I tried selling, we've talked about the, infamous like Kyron trade that I had, tried to sell off multiple pieces, and I ended up still making the playoffs. But in doing so, I made the playoffs and then still had 3 first-round picks and was able to maneuver around, got myself Puka Nacua, this year. And so that draft capital of even just the mentality of selling helped me at the start of this year, you know what I mean, to get a huge piece in Puka Nacua.
Yeah.
So tip number 6, don't be afraid to be out early on a player if you are getting a return. So we were talking about, potential people to target on a breakout, and this is almost like a two-part rule, but this is something for you to kind of keep in mind when you're trading off pieces. So we talk about age cliffs for players. So for running backs, you want to be aware of running backs who hit the age 30 age cliff, and right after that, their fantasy production tapers off pretty dramatically. Wide receivers, they actually they hold their value a little bit longer, but that's between the ages of 30 and 32. So you think of someone like Devontae Adams, who's been able to hold it. He's going into his age 32 season right now. And then the last one, tight ends are about the same as wide receivers. So, as long as you're keeping an eye on those age cliffs and you want to sell early on those players, just to get a return, like, I'm one person that I think of when we first started our Dynasty League was Nick Chubb. Like I had Nick Chubb when he was, I want to say it was like age 26 or 27. And, obviously, Nick Chubb is a phenomenal player, but like he was a candidate I probably should have traded earlier when I had the opportunity, because I think it was either that season or the season after was when he had that brutal knee injury, and then I had no value in him. Mm-hmm. But, if you're smart and you trade him out early and you are able to get like maybe like a player and a pick, to set you up for the future, that, that's the way you want to go.
Yeah, I've been in this spot before. I used to have Devontae Adams and Mike Evans on my Dynasty roster, and I think I traded them 2 years ago, because we've done the league 4 years now.
Yeah, we're going into year 4.
So yeah, I think it was the second year I traded them. So, and since then they've still had good fantasy years and good fantasy finishes.
Sure.
But I was in a position where I forget the exact deal. I know when we first started, I was like down atrocious at running back, so I had to go and get somebody. I know Pacheco was in the deal. I forget what else was in there, but I didn't want to let go of those guys. But at some point, I knew, like this time right now, like I don't know what I would do with those guys. I don't know what I would get for them, if it would even be picks or whatever the case may be. So, yeah, I probably got out on them a year or two early, but to be honest, I'm happy that I did, and it's something I think about, because there are candidates where, you know, we talked about it in our fantasy finishes episodes. Like, is this someone that you'll like go down with the ship, like a George Kittle or Devontae Adams, where you're just gonna ride it all the way out? But it kind of depends on where your roster is at, and my roster wasn't in a position to, you know, be able to do that.
Exactly. So that was tip number 6. This is tip number 7, which kind of like this one. These two are like handcuffed together. These are players potentially to get out before the age cliff. So the first one that I have for you is Terry McLaurin. Terry McLaurin's actually going into his age 30 season, and you're probably thinking like, why would I sell Terry McLaurin now? He finally has a quarterback, and he just had a phenomenal season. You are correct. He did have a phenomenal season, but it was on the back of touchdowns. You know, his touchdown rate was 11.1, which is 6.2 percentage points higher than what the average is. So, you know, that's great that Terry McLaurin had a great season, but it was on the back of touchdowns, which isn't, you know, the norm for him. I want to say, if I can pull it up, he had like 9 touchdowns, which is like so unlike Terry McLaurin. Hold on one second. So this past year he had 13 actually. I was way off. Sorry. Terry McLaurin had 13 touchdowns, but I will read you going from 2023 to his rookie year 2019 how many touchdowns he's had. 4, 5, 5, 4, 7. So he averages about 5 touchdowns a year. This was an absolute outlier season, and he's turning 30. And actually, this is next year's the last year of his deal. So if there's an opportunity, what I would do, and this is totally up to you. If you're someone who has Terry McLaurin, you go to the Jaden Daniels manager and you say, hey, listen, I have Terry McLaurin. Here's your stack right here. Give me, you know, a young player in a first or an early first. Like, that is how you flip Terry McLaurin for, you know, a really good asset that benefits your league mate, but then also benefits yourself.
It is highly unlikely that his value gets any higher the rest of his career.
Yep.
Which sucks to say, because I love Terry McLaurin, but you have to be honest. Let's be real. He's getting to 30. He just scores 13 touchdowns, which I just looked at his other seasons. That's double the touchdowns he's ever had in a season. So there's just no way that his value can get any higher unless he goes off again this year, which is entirely possible.
And you can't
bet on that.
I was gonna say, listen, that can totally happen, but let someone else, you know, run that gamble, because you're selling him at his absolute peak. If he does it again, fine. That's what you were trading, or your trade partner was expecting to have, you know. So like it is what it is. It's
an internal conversation that I have with myself a lot, where, you know, you're on the fence about a player, and would you rather, you know, go after this person and get burned with the consequences, or would you rather, you know, not go for them and on the chance that you're being right? And I would 9 times out of 10, I feel, well, I guess it depends on the situation, but like we talked about it with Christian McCaffrey in the last episode, where it's like, where he's being drafted, are you willing to draft this guy with, you know, the weighing you know, consequences of him missing another year, and because you have to draft him so highly, how that can ruin a season for you? Or would you rather not take him and be wrong and have somebody else rip with him? And I think there's definitely situations where I'd rather just not touch the player and let somebody else deal with that.
Absolutely. Next person that I have for you is Mike Evans. He's going to be playing this year in his age 32 season. So remember, in that last tip we talked about, wide receivers, they start to fall off between ages 30 and 32. Again, we're talking about Mr. 1,000 here. He's always had 1,000 yards, and he had phenomenal years. One more to break the record. Yep. That's right. But, you know, this is the year where we actually see wide receivers absolutely fall off the cliff. And a couple of examples that I have for you is AJ Green fell off after age 32. Julio Jones fell off the face of the planet. We were just talking about him retiring last year. And my man Antonio Brown. All these guys after age 32 just fell off a cliff. Like, where did this person, you know, who is this person in front of me? So, you know, obviously we're talking about Mike Evans and someone who is, you know, he can absolutely be productive in 2025, right? Godwin's hurt, McMillan's young, and you know, he has that correlation with Baker. But would you rather sell a 32-year-old Mike Evans and try to get some picks, or a younger player and get younger at that position, or hold the bag and then next year, you know, he just goes up and smoke in front of you?
Yeah, I know what side of the equation I want to be on for that one. Yeah. And speaking of Antonio Brown, I was at the game where his career just absolutely ended.
So you watched it live go up and smoke.
I'm a part of a piece of history, although I did not watch it live. Now I got to tell the story. Shout out my guy Nick. I went to the game with him. You know, we're sitting there, plays going on. You know, I'm locked in on the Jets, and all of a sudden my phone starts blowing up. And I'm sure you were part of it. Like, oh my God,
yeah.
did you just see that? What happened to Antonio Brown? I'm like, what are you guys talking about? Sure enough, I go on Twitter. This guy's dancing in the end zone. So I look
You were there, but not there.
Yeah, exactly. So I looked at my friend Nick. I was like, yo, did you see what happened to Antonio Brown? He goes, dude, I thought that was a cheerleader. I was like, are you serious? Like,
That's hilarious.
oh my God.
So phenomenal. Next one we have for you, last two that I actually have are actually two running backs. First one is David Montgomery. We were just talking about him at the top of the show. He's going into his age 28 season. He's been a borderline running back one on, again, the back of touchdowns, right? If you're catching the trend here, you know, if you're an older player that like you're sustaining fantasy value on touchdowns, it's not going to help you, you know, in the long run. And now he's entering year 3 with the Lions. With no Ben Johnson, we saw Jahmyr Gibbs really step up into a feature role. You know, his role can easily change, and he, you know, takes a back seat instead of them being the Sonic and Knuckles. You know, he's actually number 2, and you know that fantasy value just kind of goes up in smoke. So now might be an opportunity for you to sell David Montgomery and get what you can, you know, before you lose it all.
It's not even a knock on Montgomery. I think he's still
he's a great player.
He's still got it in
Montgomery.
him. But how do you have like those 3 games that he missed or 4 games at the end of the year, whatever it was, how do you see what Gibbs does in those games and just go nuclear and say, all right, let's take him off the field a little bit more?
Right.
Like, I just think that's the direction that Detroit's going to start leaning to. And it might be gradual. You know, you might still get something out of Montgomery, but I just have a feeling by the end of next year, it's going to be like Montgomery isn't even there.
Yeah, like you're trying to sell him for like a third or something. You know what I mean? And then the last one I have for you is Joe Mixon. Joe Mixon's, believe it or not, is going to be 29 this year, and I never thought about that.
Nope.
Posted a running back 9 season this last year, going into a new team.
This is an interesting stat.
And it's unlikely to repeat, right? So since 2000, we've only seen 13% of all running back 1 seasons come from players who are aged 29 or older. So Mixon, and the other key piece to this is that Mixon is not guaranteed in Houston in 2026. They could actually cut him at the end of next year and save $8 million. So, you know, if Mixon is not tied to, you know, a team, you know, past age 30, and we see here that, you know, 13% of running back 1 seasons only come from people who are 29 and older, now is the time to go. So at the bottom here, I gave you a potential option. So maybe you want to pair Mixon with a, you know, a current 2nd round pick and try your best to move into the 1st round. Like we've talked ad nauseum about, you know, this running back draft class being, you know, potentially, you know, legendary. And if you can take someone like Mixon, who had a phenomenal season, and give up a 2nd round pick to move into the 1st to get that, like, you know, that might be a potential, you know, option for you if you're the Mixon manager.
That would be a great play, especially I think, you know, a person who is very confident going with their team going into this year, like they might say, yeah, I'll gladly take a 1-year rental and give up a 1st round pick, because they might not even care for it. That might be an easy deal for you.
Exactly. So I'll just give you the playbook, so you better look at it. Tip number 8 that I have for you.
It's my favorite.
I call this one stand on business. If you have a conviction about a player, whether it's rookie in a rookie draft or player through trades, do not let anyone sway you away from your opinion, right? You'd rather be wrong about a player and you take a shot on than be right and you didn't take the shot at all, right? You know,
doesn't matter.
The first one that you know brings to mind here for me was Trey McBride. I was so sold that Trey McBride, you know, I think the year before I traded him, he had like the last 6 games, like there was a connection that you saw with him and Kyler, and he was actually producing. And it was like, wait a minute, like you might have a like legitimate, you know, tight end on your hands. So over the offseason, you know, I called my shot. You know, some people were like, well, you know, it was only 8 games. You know, Kyler wasn't true to form, and then they take Marvin Harrison Jr. like he's going to fade into the background.
Yeah.
And I wasn't letting any of that sway my opinion, because I saw what I saw, you know what I mean, when I was watching him. So, you know, I took the shot on him, and, you know, it looks like I have a tight end in Dynasty for years to come.
Listen, sports, fantasy specifically, it is such a great feeling when you call your shot and you are right.
Oh, my God.
It is one of the greatest feelings in life. I can say that. And if you're wrong, so what?
Right.
It's fantasy football, man. You got next year to worry about. Like, so this one's huge for me. Like, I just gave up Josh Allen in a deal where Bo Nix is a part of it, because I'm all in on Nix. I think there's something in there. I want to get younger, even though the age difference isn't that big of a difference. But you don't just trade Josh Allen for no reason.
Correct.
So you have to be in on who you're getting in return. And I am. And again, like, it's just such a good feeling when you're right, because you just talked about it. Let's say you have a conviction on a player and you don't make the move, and you would have been right if you did it. It's like you can sit there all day and say, oh yeah, I said this, I said that, but you're not really true to your word unless you go after the guy. So
right, absolutely.
And this also falls into like what I was talking about earlier. If you're in a position to contend and it's a trade deadline and you have a chance to go all in, like, go all in, banners fly forever.
You love that.
I don't
listen. We might actually need to get that up here.
It might have to be the same.
It might be the slogan here for the fourth.
Because it's true.
Podcast.
I tried it. So I wanted it so bad.
Absolutely.
One of these days it'll come.
Tip number 9 that I have for you: know when to buy and sell. So here's a rule of thumb for you folks at home. If you're in the off season, rookie picks are the most valuable, and the reason why is because the football season's over. All the buzz is now about the rookies. We put so much like time and effort into combines. Obviously, you're sitting here listening to this podcast, and we just gave you a whole rookie profile of every position.
And it's April,
right? So this is where the picks are most valuable, and these are where the veterans are the least valuable. So obviously, first round picks are tough, but if you want to sell or sell out your rookie picks and get in a veteran player, like, that's the time to do so. So, like, prime example, obviously we talked about the monster dynasty trades that we made when we had Ty here on the episode. So you look back at mine, right? So I gave up JSN, who is a young a budding player. I gave up a first round pick, right? And I gave up
second, right?
No, I gave up Pearsall.
Right.
So I gave up another young player, but I got back Puka, right? And you want to think about this, like, Puka, we talked about, was the highest graded PFF wide receiver in the league last year. Imagine me trying to sell JSN, Ricky Pearsall, and a first round pick to the Puka manager.
Yeah, coming off a 10 for 150 and 2 touchdown a week.
That's never happening, right? So the only way that happens is in the shifts, right? And I'm assuming Alex took pride or value into having a first round pick because he doesn't have one, and so that was probably what tipped the scale for him and making that trade, right? So that's in the off season. When you're in season, right, now rookie picks are less valuable and veteran players are more valuable because they're actually week for week producing for you on the field. And at the end of the day, then your mindset, like when we're in season, you're trying to win a championship, right? So you want those veteran players.
The amount of times I've thrown a rookie pick on top of a deal just to like try to get it to go through in season,
right? So that may be the time where, like we talked about in a previous tip, if you're a contender or a pretender, if you're a pretender and you're selling, you might be able to acquire rookie picks a lot easier than you would, if we were in the off season. So all of that is to say, play the market, right? Play the market, buy the dips when you can, so that obviously it helps your team, in the back end.
Yep. And then if you're picking up picks during the year when people don't want them, just remember, once the offseason rolled around, you can pretty much have your pick at whoever you want. You don't even have to use those draft picks on rookies. Like, go after veterans, go after proven players.
Correct.
Go after people you know what you're going to get out of.
Right. So, and then this is tip number 10. Not really a tip, but just for everyone to know. Remember, at the end of the day, it is Dynasty Fantasy Football. We are all here to have fun. We are all here because we are nuts about fantasy football and just NFL football in general. We're here to have fun. If a trade doesn't work out, so what? If you don't win a championship, so what? You want to know something? There is always next year. You can always go back for it. You can always make another trade, or go for that championship.
I sit here and nod my head like my Sundays aren't ruined 9 times out of 10 because of fantasy football. Like, listen, I'm one of the most competitive people on the planet. I hate losing. I've never enjoyed it. So yeah, it sucks when you lose, but usually like a day later, you can be like, all right.
I was gonna say, but it's for that love of fantasy football and NFL football that this podcast has even become a thing. You know what I mean? Like, we're here at the end of the day to have fun. So do not take so much, like a hurt to it if the chips don't fall your way. But obviously, when the chips fall your way, it is amazing.
Yeah, and you got to let it fly.
Yes, you do.
Talk that ish.
Yep. So listen, those are some 10 Dynasty 101 tips for you. take them as you may. Take one, take two. If you like all 10, listen, we appreciate it. But that pretty much wraps up episode 15. I really appreciate you guys listening. Hopefully you take these tips and you use them to your advantage. And if you do, you send us a message.
Yeah,
let us know, like,
know.
hey, listen, like I took your tip and turned, this player into this pick, and now I have this and I'm up. That'd be awesome to see. Yeah. But we appreciate you. Again, make sure that you're following us on all of our socials. Twitter at 4th and Fantasy Pod, Instagram and TikTok at 4th and Fantasy. Make sure you're following us on YouTube, because we're kind of booming on YouTube.
Check it out.
We're kind of booming on TikTok. So, hop on the bandwagon while you can.
Yeah, don't be late.
All right. We'll see you later, ladies and gentlemen.
See ya.